Just a short video about the Canon EOS M50. Canon introduced this camera, or well, it's about to ship over the next couple of weeks. So I thought I'd look at their promotional video and just see what we can see about this new camera. The biggest thing is the Digic 8 processor. They've introduced this because obviously they're trying to push their cameras on a bit now. I suppose Sony are pushing them. So they tend to introduce the processors and new sensors and try them out at the lower range, to be honest. So I've always found that if you go in low end, like this camera is about £600 or £700. I've seen it 600-ish. So you're getting the latest technology. If you look at the specification of this camera, it's got everything you need in a camera really. It's got the Digic 8 processor. It's a new sensor, 24.1 megapixel sensor. So you're really getting the latest technology. This camera interests me as a photographer. I just want to say this video is not really for vloggers. There are a lot of disappointed vloggers at this minute, and if you type into YouTube Canon EOS M50, what they really wanted was a 4K camera that didn't have any crop, so that they could vlog into their camera. Nice lightweight camera, and they're not very happy about it. I can see that because it doesn't do what they want. This camera, as far as vlogging is concerned, is a very brilliant 1080p type camera. It's got the screen that flips round. It's got everything you need. But this isn't really a review. This is just a quick look anyway. And if you're a vlogger, just bear in mind that Canon, the price range you're getting here, this is not a Sony A7 III at £2,000 for a body. You're at about £600, £650. So there's some packages out there. I've been having a look because I'm very interested in buying this camera. But there's different reasons. This is purely for stills photographers, people who do some video as well. I mean, the 1080p is going to be excellent out of this camera. Anyway, let's carry on. So obviously you've got the new processor, new sensor, and they put it all in a compact body. First thing that I liked about this, the screen that pulls out to the side again is not a big one for me. To be honest with you, I actually prefer the screens. And this is why you'll get one person says one thing and you'll go backwards and forwards with cameras. I actually prefer the Sony setup with the center screen, so it tilts very quickly and you haven't got to pull this out to actually tilt it. But vloggers, they love the fact that this pulls out to the side and they can turn it and talk to the camera. And so it's not a big thing to me, but what I instantly saw on the right hand side is how few buttons there are. You've got a play button, a menu button, and it looks like you've got a magnifying glass there, so you probably just punch in, but it's mainly a touchscreen camera. They're pushing these cameras now towards people that are using iPhones or using Samsungs, and they're moving on from their phones and they just want to start using interchangeable lens cameras, and they're getting into photography. So I think this is a good thing. It's more of a screen-based camera, a touch screen camera. So when you're moving over from your phone, this will start to feel more natural. The menus will be touch. You know, they've got dual pixel AF in this, so they've got one of the best autofocus systems. And they're always at the front as far as autofocus. This is the big reason why I've always stuck with Canon, is because they've got such excellent autofocus. And when you're making a living, you need that. I've just noticed, and that's why I go through their movies, to be honest. They put a lot of time and effort into these different product movies, and you whiz through them. But I just noticed on the side there, there was a Wi-Fi button as well, which is brilliant. So you can press that once and you'll be able to ping your images across to your iPhone or computer. It's an electronic EVF, so they're saying it's sharp and clear. I should think it is. I've looked at the M5. It was good. If you look at other videos, you'll a lot of people think I'm anti-EVF. I'm not anti-EVF. I just don't think it was quite there a couple of years ago when I used an XT1. It's probably coming along nicely now. I still want to see this camera and have a look at the EVF, but I'm looking at this camera for me as a ceremony camera. I want to be able to use the 5D and then swap over during the ceremony, because it's got a very quiet shutter on, or a silent shutter. Later on, I haven't seen anybody using the electronic shutter on this one yet. I have the Sony's, so when they say silent shutter, I always think, is it actually silent? But you've actually got a physical shutter in there, but hopefully they've gone electronic with that as well. So just whizzing through this camera, it looks the right size to me. The scale of it, the size of the lenses, the way you're going to hold the camera, and it looks like you've got plenty of room for your hands. You know, I can see by the angle of the shutter release, and there's the record button for video there as well on the left. It's a good size and it's a brilliant weight. Another reason why you want to look through these videos is you can see these little details about these cameras and the engineering and what they're doing. Obviously it's got the pop-up flash, which is great. I love having a pop-up flash, to be honest. I wish that all the 5Ds had pop-up flashes, because it's a very simple, safe way of firing off a flash, and then you can have a few other flashes about and it will just trigger them. Simple triggering method, without getting involved with menus and mucking around. So it's got a pop-up flash. The wheel that's around the shutter is on the M5, so I assume that knurled area around the shutter, you'll be able to turn that, and that will be your shutter speed or aperture. So that looks like it's fine. It's got a function button on top of the camera, which I'm hoping that you can just program to be ISO. So it's got FN on the top. So if that can become your ISO button, and you've got your shutter speed on your dial on the shutter release and your shutter release, it's looking like it's got everything that you need, to be honest with you. It's got a 3-inch screen, which is good, and I'll come round to this, but this camera, I think a big area where this is going to change photography now is we're all using Lightroom and we're all getting stuck with computers and editing later on. What I enjoy doing is actually putting these straight across on the iPad, editing on the iPad, and that's it, finished. I'm not going anywhere near a computer. This takes it one stage further, and a lot of the other manufacturers are doing this as well, but editing actually on your screen, so you've got a good quality screen on your camera, editing your raw files on your screen, finishing them off, and then sending them and sharing them. So this is where they get into, really. What's going to happen, I think, with photography is I see a lot of people using iPhones, and you know, the files are incredible out of the cameras. They'll start asking themselves, why am I actually buying another camera? And they've started already. Everybody's started just using phones. And what they'll get into, hopefully, is the fact that the thing that makes this different is the optics. Using different focal length lenses, using different aperture of lenses, can give you effects, tilt lenses. So hopefully, you know, photography from this point of view will never really die, because people will progress onto it and they'll see they can get different effects, optical effects, that you can't get just by editing in Photoshop. So the camera's, as far as layout's concerned, as much as I can see, it looks pretty good. It's got everything you need. It's got a mic input, so you can still do your videos. This is one of the reasons I want to get it. I believe it's got time-lapse in it as well, and I think it's a 4K time-lapse. So in theory, you can shoot 4K and you can do 4K time-lapse, so that's good. It's sort of an all-in-one camera that you can go out for the day with, or go on holiday, or you can do anything with. I think you can actually do anything with this camera. They're producing some really nice cameras at the moment. They're still going on about their Digicate, so obviously it's pretty good. Now the high-speed autofocus, until they start using these and we have a go with them, we won't really know, but I should think that's going to be pretty good as well. We'll wait for the, you know, some of the other reviewers do tons of tests on that. But what I'm looking at with this body is the distance between the lens mount and the battery grip, well, the grip area and the shutter. So this is my big complaint about the A7 range, the A7 III. When you go and put your lenses on them, you'll see that your hand is way too close to the lens and you've got no room. If you've got gloves on, or even if you haven't got gloves on, to be honest, it's not great. So it looks like they've got plenty of room, a nice angle on there as well. So I think it's going to be good to hold this camera. The other thing I just want to touch on, I'm going to do a separate video on this, but you know, put your comments below. But do we actually think Canon will actually ever bring out a full frame mirrorless camera? I'm sure they will, but I'm thinking, after I've had a really good look at the Sony system, the size of the lenses, I mean the 2.8G master lens is absolutely massive on a very small body. And as you start to think about it, as technology has improved, the APC, this size sensor, I'm pretty sure this is going to become the standard sensor. I'm not saying full frame will die. I mean, we all love full frame sensors and spending £3,500 on cameras. Well, we don't, to be honest. Well, if I can buy this camera for about £600, I can go and do anything with this camera. So I will do a separate video, but the size of the image circle, which is what you can see to cover that sensor. So in other words, optically, we need the image to cover that sensor. So all the lenses are very, very compact for this system. There's not many of them, and I don't know if it's because Canon think we're then going to use the adapter and put the full frame lenses on them. I personally would, and I will use this camera like that, because I wouldn't be surprised if I was buying one of these very quickly. So I can see that we're going to be using the full frame glass on them, but for the average person who's buying it as a mirrorless system to go on holiday, what do they actually need? Well, you've got the 18 to 150 lens, which is the equivalent of 28-ish or 30-ish, all the way through to 300mm, where you can literally take this body and that lens, and then you've got the compact pancake lens, which is, I'm sure, 22mm, and you're well away. You can go and do pretty much anything with that kit. So if everyone says they're not bringing out too many lenses, Canon have got so many lenses anyway, and you've got the adapter that fingers crossed comes with the camera. And a big one for Canon is they've got to give away that adapter with these bodies. I mean, it opens up the whole of the Canon system. So, but comment below, do you think Canon will ever bring out a full frame sensor for their mirrorless system? Why do they need to? I'm not convinced there's that much difference for the average person looking at a print between optically, and I mean this from a visual sense. I mean, this is not talking about pixels. This is just looking at prints on the wall. If I actually look at some of my images with the 40D and the 5D Mark I from, when would that have been? 8 years ago, when I was using both at weddings. And I'm looking at these images all the time, and I've used those cameras a lot. I actually have trouble when I've got the 70 to 200mm on each lens, when I've used it between the two and I'm getting an extra reach or whatever I'm doing. I have trouble now telling the difference between the two in a print, and to be honest, I can't. So this full frame versus APC, I'm going to do a separate video on that. I think there's a lot being made of it. I personally think technology is closing that gap, as in the iPhone and whatever, Samsung's, just phones in general. That gap is being closed between our sensors, the APC type, and the small sensors. It's all crushing together now. And anyway, just comment below, because I'll be interested to see what you think, and we'll carry on having a look at the rest of this camera, because there's a lot more yet. So that's the new sensor, 24.1. That's going to be teamed up with the Digic 8. I would safely say the ISO performance is going to be absolutely brilliant with this camera. So, you know, I'm not going to say much about ISO, because everyone says I should call it ISO instead of ISO. So it's ISO, but it's going to be great. And as I always say, as long as I can get 6400 ISO out of a camera, I use 3200 all the time, but I think there's too much talking about ISO at the moment, to be honest with you. let's carry on, get some more interesting stuff. So dual pixel AF is Canon's technology. The thing that is keeping them, I say keeping them in the game. They're well in the game. I mean, if I told you that I teach photography and the majority of people that still come on the courses have always either got a Nikon in their hand or a Canon, I'd say it's still 50-50. I'm yet to have anybody with a Sony, and I've been doing this for 5 years, and there's probably about 200 or 300, 400 people maybe that have been through the courses now. So Canon is very much in there. Don't let these videos, I mean, I sometimes think they've lost the plot, but to be honest with you, what they're doing is they're just looking at what everybody else is doing, and they're looking at the entry level more. You know, I've realised they are actually looking after people that are coming from the iPhone and coming over. You don't have to spend a fortune with Canon. I mean, they've just introduced 2 DSLRs, very low price. I mean, you've got your 1300D. I mean, these are the cameras that are bringing people into photography. When you go over to Sony, you'll see the money you have to spend half the time. And then the bodies become obsolete all of a sudden because they bring a brand new one out. And so Canon have been really good for photography and amateur photographers. So don't rule them out. They've got this technology, dual pixel AF. I was using it the other day with the 5D Mark IV with the client. They bought the camera, and I'm a big fan. Absolutely brilliant, easy to teach people on the screen, very accurate, a very good system, wide area coverage. So you've got 143, it says have increased to 143, 88% approximate. So, you know, it's all coming together now. So you can see where they put the face on that one, right over in the corner of the sensor, and it's still obviously tracking it. So they're all pushing forward, Sony, Canon. So that's a good thing. That means you can be on a monopod with the screen in front of you, stand still, and it'll track as well. So it's all coming together. They're getting what people want. The eye autofocus system, you can see at the bottom there, if you can just about read it, operates during one shot and face plus tracking AF. So servo AF is not supported for the eye. That's not a big deal, I don't think, really. Does not function during movie mode. That one will probably crop up with some of the vloggers. We'll see, but there's only so far you need to go with this technology. I look at these cameras and I'm not really reviewing them, to be honest with you, for you. I'm just put these videos up just so I can go through them and just work out whether they'd be any good for me. And this particular camera is ticking every box so far. So it's tracking the eye. Sony are tracking the eye. Brilliant. This one's amazing. 10 frames a second and one shot AF. That's, well, amazing. High image quality. Looks like a good camera. One thing I will say, it hasn't got dual cards. Now, this is, again, a £600 camera. I always try and put a plea out to Canon or Nikon in these videos. What I would say, more than anything, is putting 2 cards in these cameras is probably not that much of a big thing. Or putting internal memory on the board where we can just get a capture of JPEGs so we can clear it. I don't even think they need dual cards. They can just have memory inside the camera. A bit like a buffer, somewhere to store the JPEG, so we can just use it. We can use it for important things then. These are important photos. When we used to use film, we used to be taking the photos and thinking to ourselves, have we actually got any photos? When you're moving on into digital, you can see them on the back of the screen, but there is a chance of the card corrupting. You could argue you can then put it through software and you can get the images back, but if I told you I did a wedding once where I had 1 corrupted card and we couldn't get the images back, and it was the group photos during the wedding that was corrupted out of 12 cards, absolutely devastating. It does happen, but Canon, I think, like everybody else, I mean, especially Canon, the 60 should have had something in. You don't have to dual card slots. You could put some memory inside. I don't really understand half the time why we are using these cards. They could just put the memory inside, but so please do something like that. Now, I think you're going to see a dynamic range improvement. It's only a sort of guess, but from what I can see, what they're doing with this, the highlight side, you're going to see an improvement in dynamic range. 4K, I'll just touch on it, so you can go through all the other videos. The 4K is going to be 4K, basically. It's by Canon. It's going to be, it's going to be good. What people aren't very happy about is the fact you've got an APC type sensor, and then what 4K does, it actually crops in. And I just looked at a video where they were saying a 15mm lens, in other words, the wide angle end of this lens, say it's the standard lens 15, is going to become more like 38 or 40mm because you're cropping in. And obviously if you're vlogging where you're turning the camera around and you've got it at arm's length on a short pole, you really want wider lenses, so all of a sudden the 4K is a waste of time for handhold. So this is why they're not happy. And that's understandable, because they thought this was going to be the perfect vlogging camera. Well, it is, as long as you're in 1080p. Which, to be honest with you, I don't know why you really need a 4K image of yourself. But anyway, so as a 1080p, it's not cropped at all then. And you've got 60 frames a second, so you can do some slow motion. I believe, I must admit, I was slacky, I should have looked, but I'm sure it's got time lapse as well built into the camera. It's a 4K time lapse. So this is a very useful, this is a day out camera. Go out, get on a train, go out to a city, get on a plane, start, doing your movies. A brilliant YouTube camera. It's just, well, these cameras are never quite good enough for everybody. They are for me. I think they're amazing things, but obviously the 4Ks upset people. We'll see what Canon does. Sometimes they do things. So, and you can pull a still out the 4K. Obviously it's going to be cropped. So yeah, I don't know about that. This is the main area I'm interested in. Editing on the back of the camera. This is where I would like it to, when I'm working with people on the courses, this is what I'm trying to get people to do, is literally finish their images or get them as close as they can. So this is a great thing, and one of the reasons I'm considering buying this camera, to be honest with you. Yeah, so all in all, as an overview of the M50, as far as I can see, I'd go and buy one tomorrow. I'm not sponsored by Canon. I'm not anything to do with Canon. I just buy all their equipment. It works. As you'll see from some of my other videos, I'm a wedding photographer. I've done a lot of weddings over the last 15 years, and I'm just looking now for a camera that will fit in my bag. I'm thinking of, I've got a 30D that's a backup camera that basically sits there in the event that things are, my 5D breaks. So I just want a camera I can sit in there, but also a camera that I can use for, well, there's lots of different uses for this camera. I want to use it in silent mode during the ceremony when I'm at the front. There's also the 4K where you can pull the stills, so I can do 4K clips of the couple and then pull the stills for the album. That's another option. You've got the tilting screen, so you can get better angles during that time. There's a lot going on with this camera that I think it could be the one to buy for me, and it's very lightweight. I didn't show you, but I think it's about 400 grams. If that's wrong, comment below, but that is nice and light. That's lighter than the Sony's. So yeah, everything's looking good with the camera. I'll go and see it at the photography show at the NEC. Hopefully it'll be there on the stand. If it all looks good, I should think I'll be getting one. But yeah, hope that helps. If you've got any comments, please subscribe to the channel. There's a little bell symbol. You have to click that if you want to be alerted when the next video goes up. I'm trying to keep up with these new cameras now, because I haven't put a lot of videos up over the last couple of years, because to be honest with you, the technology, I don't really see it's changed that much, but there's a lot of new interesting things coming through. Silence shooting, 4K, pulling stills from 4K. There's a lot going on, and again, as you're seeing on your screen, slow motion, 120. This is one just to touch on before I go. They're even pulling Bluetooth on with their Wi-Fi through their budget camera. I say their budget, in my opinion, just before I go. I mean, we all know that we've got Wi-Fi, Bluetooth there. Canon make cameras for beginners and intermediate photographers and professional photographers. The reason that YouTube has made this sort of everyone's going against Canon is because they're seeing the professional end of cameras not having these little bits and pieces on. Well, I think if you look at the whole system now, it's just an incredible system. You've got everything you need, and you can pick any camera you want. I'd happily go out with the £300 1300D or their top of the range 1DX Mark II. I can put on the lenses and come back with a wedding, to be honest with you. So that just shows you how good their system is. Okay, if you're into Sony, have a look at my Sony videos. Again, I'm very interested in them, but hope this helps. If it doesn't, you know, put the thumbs down, but hopefully you put the thumbs up. If you put the thumbs up, obviously I'll keep making them, and comment below as much as you like. Thanks a lot.